What? It's only stupid if it doesn't work. Is the race to the bottom of the blaster market already over? Because this is the Adventure Force Cricket Pro. I wonder where they got that name from.
Series 4 deatomizer.
That's what I'm talking about.
Noisy cricket.
Hey, Kate, no, come on, man.
And this advertises 110-foot range, which usually means it's probably about 120 to 130 feet per second velocity, but this is under $7 at Walmart. $7 Pro Blaster! I mean, we were impressed with the Solo Pro, and that was a $12 blaster that jumped up to like a $15 or $18 blaster for some reason, Dart Zone. But now we don't need that anymore because we have this. Or do we need that still? The jury's still out on that one, because while this does look to be pretty much the same blaster, it is actually really different in some ways. Starting off with the way the barrel actually works, this is a Try Me package, which tells me it's supposed to be on store shelves, and yet, yeah, that doesn't bode well for product security, Dart Zone. But the way this works is pretty much the same. The barrel does flip up and lock into place. Well, obviously it's got to pivot down to load it, unless you want to try to load it through the front end. Yeah, it does that. It has a separate pivot for the actual brake action. So unlike the Solo, where it seems brake action was just a thing you could do, this blaster is literally made for it. In fact, it says quick load release. It does include a Picatinny rail. And honestly, at this price point, it doesn't really have to do a whole lot of things to win. Rabbit Tank, best match. And I guess we'll get our 4, count them, 4 Adventure Force Pro Darts. Honestly, I feel like it probably could have came with a little bit more, but at this price point, again, you can't really complain. And 100 of the suckers are right next to it on the shelf for $10, so not bad. Blaster features painting on both sides, which is super cool. Otherwise, you can see where they kind of cheaped out because it's just one flat grip, which is extremely comfortable. Yeah, I actually like the Cricket a lot more. In fact, you can start to see where these things differ a little bit. This hole is wacky. Oh, but it does work for spinning. Best blaster ever? Honestly, at this point, I almost wish they put a bearing in here. This would be the best fidget toy. Well, I mean, it pretty much is the best fidget toy ever now. Trigger is a little flat-facing bar. That's yeah, there we go. Unlike the Solo, which I can't find my non-modded one, these have metal barrels. This has plastic. Really, it doesn't matter all that much. And it is a clear plastic, so you can at least see when it's loaded, but that means the air pressure has to go from all the way up here through this turnaround and then into the barrel, which is, that's super wacky. And it does have like a detent, so it doesn't immediately spring out. It is, wow, they learned a lot from you, and now you're obsolete. Although that does mean that modifications that were for the Solo probably won't work for the Cricket out of the box. Size comparison, we've got the Cricket Pro next to the Noisy Cricket, and yeah, it is actually bigger than the Noisy Cricket. I feel like I'm gonna break this damn thing. We've got the original NERF Jolt, and yeah, it is slightly bigger than the NERF Jolt, but it's gonna be way more powerful. Comparing it to the NERF Triple Torch, the OG NERF Jolt, it is, well, yeah, a little bit longer, but definitely a little bit thinner. And compared to the Venom Pro, yeah, it is a heck of a lot smaller and shorter. By the way, at the time of releasing this video, these things are popping up on Target store shelves for 25 bucks right now, so get them before they're gone. The 2 magazines and battery alone are worth that, and you get a free blaster. Unfold our priming grip, and it works exactly how you would expect. You just pull that down. Now it's caught and ready to fire, but of course we have to load our dart, which we just go like that, and that's a pretty snug grip on that dart. And you could load it pretty darn quick. Of course, there is a Picatinny rail up at the top of this thing, so you could put any kind of optic or really any kind of Picatinny accessory you want up there. And the hole really doesn't have much of a use. I mean, you could put like a carabiner or something through it and clip it to your belt or your gear. But I think it's really just meant for this. Prove me wrong, Dart Zone. This is bar none. I don't even know how you could find a Pro Blaster that hits this hard on clearance for $7. This is really good stuff. Oh, I'm pretty sure that just completely replaced the Solo for me. But of course, the most important question is, does it shotgun? And, well, it will fit at least 2 darts in there. that is actually really good. Let's try that one more time at a little bit longer range. I think that's good. That is so good. This little thing has a ton of versatility in it. Unfortunately, I think this like plastic shroud is both clamped on and glued. There's no screws or anything, so I don't think you can add any kind of muzzle stabilization device to it. That being said, at the velocities this thing's gonna be shooting at, which is still really hot, mind you, I don't think you're gonna need it. And because somebody's gonna ask, yes, of course, you can fit a full-length dart in there, and yes, you can shoot it extremely violently. Wow. I really prefer that trigger being the like two-finger approach. It just feels right. And surprisingly enough, it does work. In fact, it works really freaking well. During the chronograph session, the Cricket Pro hit consistently about 118 feet per second velocity-wise. Keep in mind, that's stronger than Nerf Rival, stronger than Nerf N Series, and of course, almost twice as strong as Nerf Elite. Also keep in mind, this is a $7 blaster attached to a $150 scope. With a minimum of 116 feet per second and a maximum of 122 feet per second, it's safe to say the Cricket Pro will reach out and touch somebody. But does it have any kind of accuracy to back up the reasoning of using any kind of optic? And for that I'd say, actually, yes. I found the Cricket Pro to be quite capable of being an accurate blaster. Of course, your practical accuracy is lacking because this thing has about a 91mm barrel with about a 13mm inner diameter and a 16mm outer diameter. But most of my shots went exactly where the crosshair was, and that's without me actually sighting in this scope for this blaster. And considering the scope weighs about triple what the blaster does and is far larger, yeah, that's a pretty good deal. I do think the kind of two-finger trigger system does help the Cricket Pro be a little bit more accurate, and the blaster is just pointable enough you can hit your targets at some pretty extreme ranges. And the Cricket Pro does hit some pretty extreme ranges. While it isn't the hardest hitting blaster out there by far, it is more than capable enough. And the barrel hinge reload system actually works really well, even with a scope on it. You just need to kind of brace it with your finger a little bit when you let the barrel down so it doesn't collapse the whole barrel system. After I got into the rhythm, I felt this blaster was exceptionally fun and usable, to the point where I'm not scared of saying you could possibly primary this thing and have a great time. It also handles a little bit better than the Dart Zone Max Solo, thanks to its slightly more ergonomic grip in my opinion. With the only downside of the Cricket Pro being that pretty monstrous prime. It is rather hefty, especially for a blaster this compact. The package does say ages 14 and up on it, which despite its diminutive size does mean it's aimed at an older audience because of the velocities we're hitting here. Not that I think you have to worry too much, because I think younger nerfers will have too much of a hard time trying to prime it to begin with. Of course, we have to talk about the biggest comparison in the room though, and that is the Cricket Pro versus the Dart Zone Max Solo. And I have no problem saying that I think the Cricket Pro is a better blaster in pretty much every single way. The placement of that button and the fact that it hinges down like that instead of folding all the way down like that for every single reload does make this a far more enjoyable experience to use than the Solo. And considering it's coming in at half the price, even if you go down to the Solo's original $12 or $13 MSRP, this is still undercutting that pretty heavily. And when it's such a capable blaster that does pretty much everything perfectly, it's hard to argue with it. If you want a Cricket Pro with a metal barrel, you have that option with the Solo. But if you just want a really quick, off-the-shelf, capable little blaster that's going to absolutely blow your mind if you haven't flung a foam dart in the last decade, yeah, the Cricket Pro does that, and it does it absolutely flawlessly. And that's the most exciting thing about this kind of blaster, is that when this thing gets on store shelves and somebody just happens to walk by seeing like a $6 Nerf blaster, so it's 110 feet, let's try that out. They actually pick it up and use it, and they find out that foam darts are capable of so much more. When they see that 110-foot range, and then they have a 200-foot range with things like the Nexus Pro X, an entire new hobby enthusiast is born. And that's why blasters like these are so important. Yeah, you can spend double and get something like the Fury X, which is arguably a better blaster in every single way because it is mag-fed and all that kind of stuff, but it's not going to be the same thing as the Cricket Pro. They're two completely different blasters. And at under a $7 USD price tag, this is in that realm of blasters where it's just pick one up. If you're even just a little curious about this thing, there are far worse things you can spend $7 on. In fact, that eliminates most of the Starbucks menu at $7. This thing is officially cheaper than coffee in 2025. Yeah, it's possible this thing could break in the future. It could have some massive problem that I didn't find in my testing that will only show up later, or maybe there are defective ones out there. But for $7, it's hard to argue even if you treated this as a disposable blaster. Remember, in almost every single Nerf game, it only takes one dart to tag somebody out. While of course there are blasters that are fully automatic, magazine fed, that clear out entire teams at long range, you only need one dart. Technically, this'll do it. In fact, the price for performance per quality here is off the charts. This also brings up an interesting question. How much should we weigh performance to actual blaster value? Because this thing is, quite frankly, unbelievable. But even if this only shot 80 feet per second velocity-wise and used full-length darts, I still feel like this is a really good value for a blaster. Also, you got some pretty sick reloading tech like that, which is awesome. And yeah, I'm comfortable saying you can't have more fun for $7 in this entire hobby than you can with the Cricket Pro. In my opinion, this is the perfect blaster. It is a 10 out of 10, it has no flaws, it does everything it's set up to do and then more. And once again, it seems like Dart Zone and X-Shot are neck and neck in giving us the best value for our money in a hobby, when Nerf itself just seems to keep raising prices and making far worse stuff. And I take absolutely no joy in saying that. I wish Nerf would step up. I wish Nerf would blow me away, but they don't, because for the same price as this, you go out and buy like the Ward or something, and it's like 80 FPS, can't hit anything, and it's absolute. I know it's for an 8 and up audience, but it still bothers me that even if it's for 8 and up, that still means that we can't just have an accurate dart. This is pretty accurate. I have no qualm saying you could probably hit your target with this thing, even at its maximum range. You can't say the same thing for the Ward and the Pinpoint and all the N1 series darts. Before I get into it, this is a good blaster. Highly recommend picking it up. Love it.